All right, then. Welcome back after having a 2-week hiatus, a bit like the NBA did, to be fair. It was boring for a couple of weeks when they had the worst fixture list going and about 22 injuries. But welcome to episode 10, episode 11. I just lose count every time we do it. This week's different one. We have no Wayne this week due to work commitments, as we said, and it's going to be a shorter one because we have all got stuff to do, and Borussia Dortmund Man City should be an interesting game. Luckily, there's no Championship Watford on this week either. But introduction. So, Corey, how you doing today?
Yeah, not bad. Feeling better. Obviously, had a couple of weeks off for reasons you boys know. But yeah, no, I'm back to things, feeling positive. Work sort of picking up again. Just waiting for that announcement so I can get back abroad doing what I do best.
There it goes. Yeah. Decent. That will come on to our sponsor in a bit. But JP, how about you? How's your 2 weeks?
Good, mate. Good. I had a day off Monday, booked it off so I can enjoy the sun, even though it's still snowing in the morning, which is quite weird. But just having the random weather has been annoying. But the gyms are open again now, so that's a good thing as well. That's a bonus. Currently aching, but you know, I'm glad that they're back open.
Yeah, no, don't blame me. I said before, I'm out Friday, which should be decent. Can't really complain then. I've not had a chance to go to the gym or actual drink properly yet, so I can't wait for that. For me, yeah, been busy 2 weeks. It was Easter break, however, that actually made my life busier than what it was being at work, which meant I couldn't come around. We couldn't sort of organise our 2 weeks on for this.
And you got to see me, which is
I got to spend
major bonus.
Unfortunately,
I spent some time with Corey as well in person, which was a good laugh. And then, yeah, Mum's birthday one Wednesday as well. That screwed it up because the funny thing is, right, this is where. So I rocked up a bit like about 12 o'clock, fully remembered it, no issue about that. As Corey texted me and said, "Did you remember?" I was like, "Yeah, I did." But the presents that my brother and sister got actually didn't hit the mark. I rock up with a present that did.
I'll say today,
yeah. Yeah. So I was gloating a little bit, as you can imagine, because there was a bit of a disagreement with me and my sister a couple of prior. So who won? Me. We'll know
that's not like your family to disagree amongst siblings.
But yeah, me and Beck definitely always on the same page. Bosh,
and Matt on the same page as everyone at all times. So,
before we get going, I'm going to have a bit of update on the competition that we've had. Some crazy events sort of took hold a couple of weeks ago when I sat on here and called the Charlotte Hornets to take Miami Heat and looked at and ridiculed, and then I think it was also the Clippers, Philadelphia, where JP then went Philly to not do anything, which actually left JP 0-2 that week. Corey went 1 for 2, sorry, same with Wayne, and I went 2-0, which puts some competition back into this. So Wayne is currently leading with 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 wins. I'm close behind with 12 wins now in there, and then making it interesting, Corey is caught up to go 8-8. So JP and Corey are sat there with 8 points. And considering JP has the extra benefit of picking the games, doesn't seem to be working.
Yeah, but it's changed now. You all know the same time as me. Like I don't think ahead now. Like it's just on the day where.
Yeah, well, maybe you need to start thinking ahead because when you were giving it a surprise, Corey was having no chance.
In all fairness, I'll give it to JP. I've had 2 weeks away where I've not focused on ball at all. I've just been dealing with other stuff. So now's his chance to really, really take advantage because I couldn't say I've not even watched a game in 2 weeks. So he's now got the time to streak ahead.
Do you know what, Corey? What you need to know in these last 2 weeks is the majority of big name players have been injured. Clippers are playing all right basketball at the moment because everyone else is injured. And that's it.
Well, I won my first basketball bet. I've not watched ball in 2 weeks, and I won my first basketball bet on Friday. Like, just goes to show, doesn't it? Stop watching basketball and just go, this is going to happen, and it might be all right. So maybe that's it. I'm not going to watch any basketball for the rest of the year, and you're not going to be buying me drinks.
Just before we get started, also shout out our sponsorship with Iron Napa, where people go to forget what they've got at home.
X on the beach.
Tory's own series.
God damn.
Yeah. So that's our sponsorship, and that is actually staying in there because I ain't said anything wrong.
Yeah, I'll give you that one. I don't care anymore.
So we, during the time that we have had off, we sort of spoke about our final trades that we wanted to see at the deadline, and we spent the 24 hours, 48 hours after in the group chat going crazy about what we said, what we had. We had a long debate about Kyle Lowry in the last show, which then we spoke about a bit more, who never went on to move. There was a couple of trades we wanted to see, and that actually did happen. We also had a big debate, which still goes on now, regarding Norman Powell and how impactful he's going to be in Portland or not, or Gary Trent Jr., which actually, when I sat down and watched a couple of games the other night just to pick up on this, I think they both have found a better fit, which is like, this is where I'm looking at it now. I was going at it originally like, oh, Norman Powell, I think that's a great addition. But actually, Gary Trent Jr. now being quite a big piece in Toronto is going to give him the ball a bit more, see a bit more from him, which actually will make his numbers sort of go through the roof, which we saw the other night. And then also I think in Norman Powell, we're going to see a bit more maturity, a bit more accountability on him in Portland. So for both, they will rise up in this, and it's just going to make it interesting.
In all fairness, it was one of those where I feel like, in hindsight, everyone was right. So myself and you were two big fans of Norman Powell going, and he's balled out. He started playing well, but the same for Gary Trent Jr. He's come to Toronto, and suddenly his numbers have gone bang. People are looking at him like, well, this guy's all-star quality. And in two, it's actually, I think, got the benefit of moving two pieces that were settled. And it's just that sort of shaking things up and going, right, we're going to add a guard that does something a little bit different. And it works for both sides. And the other day, I think Wayne said, oh, yeah, well, Toronto won the trade. I was like, yeah, but you're saying that over the last 4 or 5 results. You've missed out the other 10 results since that trade deadline where Norman Powell's played well. He's been a big part of the team. We were both right.
You've also got to think about Rodney Hood and his sort of like contribution within all this as well. He hasn't played much after the trade, but I'm agreeing with both of you in this sense, and the fact that, you know, it's been beneficial for all parties involved, the teams and the individuals.
I like trades like that.
Powell's balling. Gary Trent's become, you know, a guard that people are like taking interest in. Because if you're back up to CJ and Dame, you're not really going to get looked at, really.
Yeah, I think what it's done for Trent Jr. has made him a starter in the league. Definitely. I think it'd be 100%. Like, and that's probably what he needed. Whereas what we got used to was just seeing him come off the bench and do a decent job. So I agree. I think in hindsight, the trade itself was great for us because we spoke about it. We went down this route of who won, and we seemed to just sort of argue the point for the other side, but actually looking at it, the reason it was so hard to argue, and if you look back through our messages, it was like, completely agree with that, but it was like
it was stat versus stat, and it was like, it got to the point of where it was like, yeah, but he dropped 40 this night, yeah, but he dropped 42 this night, and it was like, but he was playing against the Cavs, yeah, but he was playing against this team, and it's like, we're going tit for tat. Can we not just agree the fact of actually both players and both teams came out on top? It was a good trade all round, and I'm first seeing that. You want to see the league get more competitive. You don't want to see a trade where one team dominates and the other team goes, "Oh, hey, we're going to rebuild for the future," like the Vooch trade. Well, we don't want to see that.
I definitely think if we're not going to sit on the fence, I'm going to say every party's come out on top. I definitely think moving forward, I've just checked Gary Trent Jr.'s contract, and it's like $1 million each year for 3 years. So he's on a total of like 3 years. And then now the fact that he's balling out, he's gonna get that pay rise that he did.
Easily.
Yeah, definitely. He's got money coming his way now. I think he's a starter in the league. Another thing we did speak about in the chat in terms of we had a couple of weeks ago, the Anthony Edwards, Zion Williamson, big old chat about dropping career high. I just want to throw it
Zion's found
out
that
there.
fadeaway.
I just want to throw it out. If we're taking career highs, that makes Lou Dort better than Zion Williamson.
Was it he dropped 42?
Rookie
he dropped
of the year.
42, yeah.
Rookie of the year. He may be getting rookie of the year because everyone's, dropped like flies
injured.
Injury. But yeah, because of injury. But rookie of the year, still take that.
Yeah, like I'm still in that agreement. I still put him as rookie of the year. Like I do. I watched him play. I think there is something there that's quite interesting to watch.
I watched the. For some reason, I stayed up one night and I was watching the Pacers against the Timberwolves.
Wow, you couldn't sleep.
I don't know what was going on, mate. Honestly,
I'll tell you what. If I had insomnia, I would put that game on.
Yeah. Exactly.
There's people in Indiana and also Minnesota who didn't watch that
game. But the Pacers were like fourth quarter, like 2 to 3 minutes left, and they were up by 12. And then Anthony Edwards just took over. He's going coast to coast, transition ball, and it became a 2-point game where the Timberwolves were considering fouling and trying to get the Pacers in a bonus. And I'm thinking, this shouldn't be happening. Like, and it was weird as well seeing the rookie actually take the grip of the game and with his own hands. And because obviously I speak highly of him, but for him to actually do it and control the game and try and get back the Timberwolves back in it. It was good to see.
I think obviously I've spoken before about things I love in basketball and things I love watching. The difference with basketball compared to a lot of other sports, and you kind of see it in football. You kind of see it in like football, like the one where they've got an egg and they don't kick it. But you see it, young players coming through and them doing well, but to take the game by the balls, like to watch a player, a youngster who's fresh into the league, coming out of college at 20, 21 years old, and just go, I'm going to go toe-to-toe with every single player in this league is incredible to watch. And it's like Jar last year. And it does. It makes the game so much more interesting because in football, how often do you see a youngster come through that lights up the league on a consistent basis? Like, say, take it to football, look at like Rashford or at the moment Emil Smith-Rowe. He's still not the best player in the league. He's still not taking serious numbers, scoring loads of goals. He's just affecting games. Whereas in basketball, you watch a guy go, right, I'm going to jam it in someone's face. I'm going to go and drop 40 on someone. And it's crazy to watch.
Like, funny enough, there's a couple of things I want to add on to that. Corey, you might not remember, but do you remember in our flat when I was playing NBA a lot and we did on My Player? The one player I always traded was Ben McLemore, right? And for some reason, didn't I? There was a couple of years ago, I was so high on Ben McLemore, massive fan. And that was similar. I watched him and thought, that's what I like to watch. And you forget about you're not looking at it for him to win. And in football at the moment, one of my favourite players to look out for is Jude Bellingham. And it was all because in the England game the other week, he got the ball, did a couple of skills like right outside the box and went forward. And I thought, he's like 17. How is he doing that? And one of the reasons I'm going to watch the game tonight is to watch him play. And like,
it's impact.
I don't care. I don't care who wins. I'm literally going to watch Phil Foden and then Jude Bellingham. That's all I want to see. And for you, JP, watching Anthony Edwards, that's what you want to do.
That's basically what it is for me.
Yeah. And that's what sport does, which is why it's so interesting, why it's also interesting to we have our debates on it, because for me, Zion's that guy. For me, I want to go like, and that's where the argument sort of went from. Right, on to today's topic. Again, during this 2 weeks we've had off, we've seen one team turn into the Avengers and assemble everyone possible. We've had, along with the James Harden, they went and got Blake Griffin, they went and got LaMarcus Aldridge. That team is looking a joke in terms, actually, when they're on song, they look great. Like
who Drummond babied, by the way. Should we talk about that one a little bit?
Yeah, we'll get into that.
We'll come on to that later. I've said that.
But I was watching them, and I've watched them since, and thought, wow. And the question I gave to you guys in the chat was, what is the greatest team ever assembled? Okay, and there's a lot of avenues we can go in this, like the team that was best assembled that won it all, the team that was best assembled but just fun to watch. And before I come to you guys, there's honourable mentions that I've got that I know that I loved watching from teams that are assembled. So early 2000s, the Lakers had Shaq and Kobe coming off of the three-peat. They picked up Karl Malone and Gary Payton back at the end of their career. And I just remember thinking, like, watching clips and watching highlights and everything, and what a team. When you look at it, you had Karl Malone, Shaq and Kobe all in one team, and GP, like, that's a joke. That's one team that I think in terms of being assembled is great. And then another one before we move on to our actual pitch is, this is one of my favourite all-time teams to watch, and actually the level of play is not that high, but this also explains my Carmelo loving, was the Allen Iverson, Melo, J.R. Smith, Kenyon Martin, and Nene Denver Nugget team of like the late 2000s. I could watch them day in, day out.
That baby blue jersey, Melo killed it in. Yeah.
Melo with the braids before the New York, that team. Yeah, I watched them in the 09-10 season when they were up against LA in the conference finals. And I know AI wasn't there at the time. He got traded at that point, and it was Chancellor Billups. But that team, I fell in love with, which is where my Melo loving now still sits from. Like, that Melo is top level Melo to me. So that's a team that I always, when it comes to this, and I was like, I've got to talk about them. I know he's not here tonight, and I'm glad when we spoke to him, he said this is his team he wants to talk about, and I hope it do it justice for him. Wayne said his sort of best team ever assembled is the 85-86 Boston Celtics. And actually, I did a piece on my Instagram prior to a couple of years ago about this team in terms of being one of the best teams ever. Okay, and this team was they went on to an NBA. They went to be NBA champions. Okay, and what they did the year before, they didn't win it. What they went and did in the offseason is go and sign previous MVP, previous NBA champion Bill Walton, who had no knees, lost all athleticism, lost everything. However, if you want to go and watch how basketball should be played, watch this team. The Boston Celtics, YouTube have a great documentary about them, and they move the ball better than any team I've ever seen. And that's like the God's honest truth. That's not me saying like Draymond Green's MVP. This is the truth about it. Like, that team, the way they moved the ball, some of the passes, and it was all built around Larry Bird, Kevin McHale, and Robert Parrish, who, if people don't know, Parrish holds the record for most aid in the NBA, like, unbelievable center. But this team was so built well. And just to read off the stats, they 67-15 record in the league. That's in the mid 80s. Is a great record. They blew past. They won Houston. They beat Houston Rockets in the finals. Blew past Milwaukee Bucks, Atlanta, and obviously Michael Jordan's Chicago Bulls in the first round.
I'm pretty sure that was one of the best records of the 80s. Actually, I think 68 was, maybe the best ever. In the 80s, I think maybe 68 or 69 was the most won games in the 80s. And
it's a joke. When you look at here, their offensive rating was third in the NBA. Their defensive rating was first in the NBA. Like, for a team to literally be able to do both is, now we don't see it often, and go on and win. So that, for me, and I know I'm glad Wayne put this team forward, because actually, for basketball purists and people wanting to learn more about basketball, this is a team you go and watch. The ball barely touched the floor, and if it did, it was still a bounce pass. It wasn't because people were dribbling. So and then you get to see Kevin McHale do his up and under, like, best post move player going, and Larry Bird being Larry Bird that year. So honestly,
who just did whatever he wanted at all points and was still the best at it,
and took the mick out of everyone on every court. So please go and have a look at that if you want. So I was chatting to you two at the beginning. You got some curveballs from Spanish, so I'm going to go with me first about mine, and then I'm going to let you two just go with it on yours. And for me, there are two teams in this in terms of the best teams assembled. I'm going to start with the first one, and I want to know your thoughts. So mine is the 07-08 Boston Celtics, and I spoke at length about what got me into basketball around that time, watching KG and Ray Allen join up with Paul Pierce, who loves a party. in that season with Doc Rivers, coach Rondo, Kendrick Perkins, they had a record of 66-16. Great for me to say. Honestly, what I remember from that year was just they looked so in control. They were great. They ended up being a very good Lakers team in the finals, and 6 was even better. Like, didn't need the 7th. Did it then back in the Garden. That, to me, it did those 6. For me, that team there was a hell of a team. Don't want your opinions on that, guys, because I know you know how I feel about it. But this team, I want your opinions, because I think this is by far the best team ever assembled, talent-wise. Is the 2011-2012 Miami Heat. Read off some names on there: Chris Bosh, Shane Battier, Udonis Haslem, Juwan Howard, James Jones, Mike Miller, D Wade, LeBron James in his prime. The LeBron James. That, to me, is by far the best team ever put together. That's my statement. That's what I'm sticking with. They went and won it that year. That's LeBron's second year there. Their record was 46-20 because it was a shortened season. Okay, they were just unplayable at times. Some of the things they were doing, and at that time I remember watching, you've never felt they had the ball, but they're up 20 because they just ran on people and played such good basketball. So, and again, I think when you look at great teams and you look at the teams they beat to get to where they did, I think they beat the New York Knicks, which was Melo and Amare. They beat Indiana, which is Paul George, and actually Indiana at that time had a great record. Paul George, Danny Granger, George Hill, great team in there. They beat an olden Boston Celtics, and then they beat in the final OKC, which I know we're probably going to talk about in a bit. So for me, greatest team assembled is the Miami Heat. Okay, Corey, I want to know what you think about my choices, and I want you to go into yours.
That's interesting, to be fair, because I think it's hard for me to take a stance on this one, which you'll probably see from my actual choices anyway, because it was only 2014 when LeBron went back to the Cavs of when I first started watching ball, which was with you. So I've watched back, and I've watched a lot of that season as well. That Miami Heat year, the 2011-2012 year, was it the Ray Allen year as well?
Yeah, Ray joins later on in that one.
Yeah. So that was kind of the first season I've sort of ever remember really understanding what was going on, and I've watched it back recently, especially before the last playoffs. Obviously, it being in COVID and stuff, there was a lot on Sky Sports that were talking about different things. So I actually quite like that decision, and the big three there as well, not just in terms of stats and ability, but how they were as a group of people. And you could see it from their interviews afterwards. They're a team of people that loved playing with each other. And it kind of helped that they're all pretty good at ball. So I kind of get your decision there. And to be honest, it kind of makes me a bit, I feel like I've dodged a bullet and just taken the safe bet as my decision, because we all know what team is always going to be voted for the best team ever. So moving on into my selections, I wanted to kind of, doing what I normally do, I kind of go with something different to what everyone else would normally say, but there's too much evidence to argue against it. So the two teams I was deciding between, so I picked 3 teams. The 2 teams I was deciding between were the Bad Boy Pistons between that sort of 88 and 91 era, because they were the only team in the league that went, we're going to go and beat MJ. We're going to go at this team. And the way they went about things, and I think me and you have sat there and watched documentaries before about these guys. And that was when Rodman was actually at Pistons at one point. That defensive line they had was insane. They had scorers, they had Isaiah running the court, and also they were a smasher in the mouth team. And you know full well my philosophies in any sport. Smash them in the mouth is the way I play any sport. And I'm a big fan of that. But at the same time, they only had a couple of good years, 3 years competing and actually looking like they were gonna win it. My second team was the 73-9 Golden State Warriors, and obviously we talked about this before the recording. And they didn't win that year. They went 73-9, because of Mr. LeBron James came back at the age of 31, and went, right, I'm going to take it. And obviously, there's still highlight reels from that year, the chase down blocks and the Kyrie shot. Even little things in that series about where LeBron hung onto the rim for too long and should he been teed up and stuff like that. That it was a great series to watch, and no one will ever deny that was one of the best series I think people have ever watched.
Yeah, coming back from 3-1.
Yeah, exactly. And again, the things that happened in that, and we've spoken about this on the show before, of Kyrie living in the moment, and his shot wasn't the biggest part. It wasn't the biggest play in that series, and it was the chase down and stuff like that. So that was a hard team for me to go 73-9 and to literally blow everyone out the water. For me personally, if they'd have gone and won the chip that year, they would be in that conversation because they've got the best ever NBA record. And do I think that's ever going to be matched against 73 wins and 9 losses in a season? That's hard to emulate. And I know people said that about the Bulls, but it took 15 years, 25 years to go or 20 years to go and emulate that. So leading on to my actual choice is the 95-96 Bulls. And I feel like it's a bit of a cop-out. I really do. But at the same time, when you had a human cheat code and stuff like that, I've got some of the stats down here. Yeah, mate, I'll go into his stats. So I'm just going to run through what I've written down. So they were the first team to ever hit 70 wins in the NBA. And by no means was it easy to do it in the 90s either. Yes, they had MJ, but he had just come back off of going and playing a different sport, which he was very good at. Coming back and having a lost year and getting knocked out in the second round of the playoffs, to then coming back and going, we are still the best team in the league. So you had MJ. They were the first team to win 70 games in a season. They actually went on a 44-game win streak from finishing the 95 season coming in. They won 37-0 straight at home, but that was across the end of the last season moving in.
Yeah.
So they were 37-0 at home and went on a 44 win streak. They only lost 2 back-to-back games that year, and they were both on the road. One was against the Suns, and one was against the Nuggets, I believe.
Which like, at the time, and Mutombo, which is a young Mutombo, so he's getting up. Just saying, we know about Seattle at that time, but Mutombo and the Nuggets had players.
Yeah, and moving on, just not necessarily from what they achieved, they also won the chip that year. Not only that, we always bang on about storylines. And we always bang on about having that sort of history and having that story behind it. It was the MJ comeback year. It wasn't the full year he came back from baseball, but that was his first year back of full season stamp on the league.
It was the official return. It was the official return of 2-3 as well. He came back as 45, and it's official return of 23 in it.
Yeah, and it was thing. And then coming into further things from it, they averaged 105.2 points per game, which is the most effective offense in the league. They also only gave up 92.9 points a game. But that was third in the league in 95-96. And imagine that now. But obviously the game's easier, more fouls, more calls, but defensive efficiency, they were third. And then if you look at the 3 big men, the three stars at the time, you had MJ dropping 30.4, 6.6 boards, 4.3 assists, 2.2 steals a game, and hitting nearly 50%. And then you had Pippen, who was chipping in with 19.4, 6.4 boards, 5.9 assists, 46%.
And guarding their best player.
Yeah, and then you had Dennis Rodman, who was defensively amazing. I was quite surprised in his block stats weren't more than one a game. Really surprising stats, but he also put up 14.9 boards a game. He was highest in offensive and defensive rebounds, and also arguably one of the best defenders in the league at the time. And then you had Kukic coming off the bench, who was hitting something ridiculous like 40% from 3.
Yeah, ridiculous, he was from 3. And
he was averaging 13 points a game. He got 6th man of the year that year as well. And then you've got Phil Jackson, who this is now going into what is 6th, 5th? No, wait, that was his 4th. Sorry, that was his 4th championship. His 4th ring with the Bulls, and he got Coach of the Year. And you put all those things together, and don't get me wrong, you've got MJ in your team. Chances are you're probably going to win something. But then to have Pippen, who was the biggest facilitator next to him, and someone who was happy to go, all right, I'm playing next to the best guy in the league. I'm going to do that, and still doing what he's doing. and then Rodman to come in and go, all right, well, you can go and do that, and I'm going to get beaten up on every single end. To then have the best coach in basketball of that era, let alone that year or even the 90s, he covered the 80s, 90s, and then he went and won chips with LA in early 2000 as well. The greatest coach. And then to add the sixth man of the year at the time, and not to forget, most of their players hit all-star, all-defensive, scoring records and everything like that. It's hard. It's really hard to go, actually, I believe someone else. And those are a whole big-ass list of reasons why the 95-96 Bulls are the greatest team assembled.
Corey, I must admit, I didn't look past the latest team I had was that early late team, and
0102 Lakers, I think it is, you're on about, and they had Phil Jackson at the time, and that's when he won his chip.
And part of me looked at that, and I just didn't think about going down that route, because I think what's hard is when you go about assembled, you don't think about the great players, because you, like, MJ's a cheat code at that point. My Miami team, LeBron James in his prime, is how I'm selling it. But I'm going to start with the first team. You said the Bad Boys. I love the Bad Boy Pistons. Yeah. And actually, when you look at the players they had, even like John Sally, they had Zeke, Isaiah Thomas. They had what's his partner in the back? Dumas, who like
John Dumas,
Bill Laimbeer. And actually, funny enough, like the documentary you watch, I believe they might have had a better chance the next years, because in 91 there was the expansion draft, and actually some of the Piston players, I think each team could only protect like 7 players, and some of the better Pistons players, or that they couldn't put in there, were high picks in the expansion draft, which actually ruined their chances going forward. But fast forwarding onto your Miami and into your Chicago Bulls, I mean, it's a great pick, and actually your reasons to why, yes, you said it was obvious pick. However, you can't just leave that as, because they won that many games. You've given us reasons there to exactly why. And the player that, if you don't know Chicago Bulls at that time, Tony Kukoc, absolute baller. And funny enough, me and Matt had this chat the other week about Tony Kukoc. He's got a picture in his room of Michael's last shot against Utah.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that, obviously, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just picking out who was guarding who, coaches in the corner. And I just said to him, I was like, I think if Kukoc is 10 years later in the league, he's a better Dirk Nowitzki. And we just sort of had a chat about that. And Tony Kukoc is a great player, and actually one of the best players to ever play in the NBA. I think, just unfortunate, he was behind Jay Pippen and Dennis Rodman, so it didn't matter. But P, what's your thoughts on Corey's picks?
I like his picks. As we mentioned, the Bad Boys. They were a team that I looked at as well. The only thing that let me down with the Bad Boys is when they started off all that controversy of they didn't shake hands at the end.
No, they walked off the court early. There were still seconds on the clock, and they walked off the court.
They walked off the court, and I'm thinking, I get you about.
But if you look at that, there's a good Bad Boys Pistons documentary ESPN do, 30, and actually they all say a couple of years prior, the Boston Celtics of Larry Bird, Kevin McHale did the exact same thing. Yeah. The biggest issue, I think, in that case and at the time, people didn't like the Pistons. There's a reason us three, and I know Wayne likes the Detroit Pistons, because we all like being hated. Deep down, there's an infamous day that me and Corey relive all the time in our first year of being hated by everyone in one room.
That isolation, I'm calling that the ISO day, right? From now on, that is called the ISO day. Myself and Tom were there, and we've always been good at it. And it's the same with basketball. Basketball were always liked by people, but we also didn't care what people thought. And we adopted that attitude of we do what we do, and you can try and do what you want to do about it, but it doesn't matter because your opinions mean nothing to us. We're going to do what we do. And the thing is, we adopted that on the court. And I think that's why all of us truly respect that Bad Boy Pistons team, because we've all got the same mentality of you can think what you think about me, but I'm going to do what I do.
Yeah, massively. And that ISO day, just for context, JP, we were sat in University of Brighton canteen, so sprinters. And
you know the hedge table in the middle, like an 18-seater table?
And
we were sat in the middle of it.
And considering we didn't go to hall, so we didn't get free dinners. We were sat in there dinner time, having our own food just before basketball training. And we sat on our own opposite each other. And I promise you, the closest people either side were about 10, 15 chairs away from us. All right. And we sat there, and the people behind Corey were looking at Corey. And I went, by the way, they're looking. And he went, what have I done to annoy them? I went, don't know, probably on a night out. And then he goes to me, by the way, the people behind were looking at you. Like, and it was, we had eyes on us in terms of they were looking at us like we'd annoyed them. And deep down, we still talk about it now. That's 5-6 years ago, like gone by. We loved every minute of it. Yeah. Like we played up to it. I think we spoke louder. We laughed louder. We wanted people to come and confront us. And that's why the Pistons to us is one of the best teams to ever had. And Corey's right. We took that onto the court, and actually, what you look through the freshers that come through past us, your Shems, Greg, Wayne. They had that in them, but it was sort of like it could have easily been left aside, and we don't want that. The players that didn't have that in them were they were cast aside. There's the captain of my vice captain the year I weren't there for the first half. I will say Corey will work out his name in a bit, but he didn't make it. He didn't make it in terms of for more games, because Wayne came in, took his spot as point guard straight off the bat, and he was a great guy around the team, but he just didn't have that mentality which sat with us when we played other teams, especially away from home, to do that, and we enjoyed that. So the Pistons to us is one of the best teams that had. JP, I'm coming to who is your team for the best assembled team? You had a couple of spanners, and I want to give this time to you. So please go over to you.
But just to highlight your team that you mentioned, I don't know how to explain it, but the year after, I enjoyed watching the Heat even more, and that 2012-2013 season, and I just reminisce about that LeBron James dunk over Jason Terry, and that just summed up, that epitomized what that team was about and what they had to go through. And that conference finals against the Indiana Pacers was a physical and intense battle. And I like that. I think they added one addition that extra year. You mentioned obviously the 11 to 12 season, and I think they added Birdman the season after. And that intensity throughout the whole year, just I wish you could go back to that year as well in terms of just the modern game, in terms of fouls being called, because fouls are being called for everything now. And that was one of the last years I remember where the intensity was so high and physical. It was one that I will really remember for their ages.
Yeah, definitely. That year was good for basketball. And I always think that was the year they did the nickname jersey. I think Miami had their all black, like blacked out jersey as well. So it was a nice year.
And then LeBron had with the all black, he had I think he had like
the black mask.
And I just made everything. It's just a narrative. Yeah. It just made everything. My method, I got this off the open court. So during the 2 weeks off, I watched a lot of the open court, and they were talking about teams that have been assembled. And obviously Shaq was on about how he brought GP and Karl Malone. But I'm taking his version of teams where they're not deliberate. They're done more like strategically and through the draft, and it was done in almost a coincidence. And one of the teams I need to highlight is the same year, the 2011-2012 OKC team. And you've got to give big mention to Sam Priester here. He drafted, what is now 3 MVPs in James Harden, Durant, and Westbrook. One of them's a walking triple-double. The man at the time, James Harden, was 6th man of the year. Hopefully we can get Scott Brooks on to explain why he was 6th.
Definitely.
You know what I mean? Like why he wasn't starting ahead of Cephalosha. For those who don't know, his name's Tabo Cephalosha, but he needed to be starting in that team, and it just didn't make sense as to why he wasn't. Obviously, maybe as we talk about, his impact off the bench may have been better, but them three on the court, ridiculous. And he was playing clutch minutes again, and it shown in the dying ages of the playoffs where Harden came big. And you look at Durant and Westbrook now and what they've become because of that. And I feel like they were a team that everyone looked at and didn't like as well for some reason. They just, they did well, but people didn't want them to do well. There was no narrative around them. There was no hype, and I don't think people enjoyed that at the time. And I don't think people found them interesting to watch.
And I think what's massive about that team, I completely agree with you. And actually, you look at who else that team had. He got hold of Serge Ibaka in that draft, in a draft prior. He got Jeff Green in the KD draft. And actually, he rebuilt that team, which were the Seattle Supersonics, into what we now know as OKC. And actually, OKC for a new team is such a hard way to do, and the draft is the best way for them to go about it. And actually, you saying there about that team not being completely light, I think the massive part of it was we never felt, and I'm going back, I'm saying a we as in a basketball fan at the time, I never felt they ever could beat LeBron and Miami Heat. And the biggest downfall we had was, and the basketball they played was never fun. That, like, I talk about Russell Westbrook now, and I still have sour taste in my mouth because at that time I did not like him because I was a huge Kevin Durant fan, and he was taking the ball away from KD, and I didn't like that. So for me, I never liked at that time, and I agree. Harden, he came off the bench with Nick Collison and did his bit. And you're right, when we hopefully definitely get Scott Brooks in to the show, we can ask him actually what was the thought process of saying that. Is James Harden come off the bench because you need those minutes there, or is Thabo Sefolosha showing us something if we didn't see as fans? I mean, OKC in building the draft is I don't think a team, there's probably one or two teams, but they're in the top three who've done the draft the best over that time. And it'd be really interesting to see what they've got over the next 5-6 years to the amount of picks they've got.
Well,
Haven't they got like 24 draft picks over the next 3 years or something crazy like
ridiculous. That? But in the time period that we're on about, I also had the thought of the 2014 San Antonio Spurs. Now, they drafted Kawhi Leonard that season. It wasn't their pick. I believe they drafted...
it wasn't.
They traded him for with Indiana.
That was it. That was right in the end. But I also think that season opened up international basketball a lot more. They ended up getting Boris Diaw, Thiago Splitter, Manu Ginobili throughout that period. And I think it helped expand European basketball. Obviously, at the time they had Tony Parker. I think he went in 2003 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
So he was obviously there and an early bloomer. But then to add again the likes of the Frenchman Boris Diaw, and then Manu Ginobili coming off the bench, and Kawhi Leonard, Danny Green. I think that team was really, really well put together. But then also having that kind of coaching from Big Greg Popovich, I think that really helped. And again, that systematic ball with them sort of players. You need them players on board who are in it for the team, and that's what separated OKC and the Spurs, where you've got 3 individuals in Harden, Durant, and Westbrook, and they're playing ball which is individual. And I'm all for strategic basketball, and I'm all for the system. I'm more for that systematic ball. And I think the team that Greg had and what he was able to do and assemble and what they produced was unreal.
Yeah, and I think another thing said about that team is actually, I agree. I forgot about that team. Which is why I love doing these, because there's things I forget and don't remember. And actually, what I remember from that team is the year later or 2 years down the road, they're the team that stopped LeBron and made LeBron go back. So you had an old Tim Duncan. And if we're talking about drafting, San Antonio Spurs did something that teams don't do anymore. And the year they drafted Tim Duncan, they had David Robinson anyway, who was coming off of an injury. So that's why they got the bottom pick and the lottery pick. Robinson back, and actually, who is a big man, they went and drafted a even better big man. Not many teams would do that. Not many teams would go, well, you look at Minnesota Timberwolves, granted, Anthony Edwards right now and coming in, there was a talk, him or Wiseman. However, we knew Minnesota weren't going to take Wiseman because they had Cat. So it was like, you just wouldn't see that now. And I think the credit goes to San Antonio for that. They went, okay, actually, Tim Duncan is that good coming out of college. We need him no matter who we have. And
they ended up winning, I believe, 03 when they actually drafted season after he drafted him, and it worked. It worked having both Robinson and Duncan there, and obviously,
so that was the '99 season. Yeah.
We are slipping on that a little bit, because this is where the argument comes in: was Tim Duncan a power forward or was he a centre? And that's purely because of that. And that was the polar opposite, I think, of what the Golden State. And this is why Golden State came up in my conversation, was because they reinvented small ball.
Yeah.
And they were the first team to efficiently pull off the small ball with playing, 6'7", 6'8", Draymond Green at the centre. And they're like, teams are thinking, hold on a second, the tallest player on this court is 6'8", and we're getting blown out 130 to 90. Like, how is this happening?
Corey, I was coming back to you actually, because we're talking about that draft process, and I'm a big fan of JP's pick there. And actually, I think this is an episode where we don't say, oh, that team is definitely it. And it's more what we see, and we can put it out to people. Corey, your comment on the Golden State, I think we need to go back to them, because they did what we're talking about in terms of the draft. They did that draft better than most. And to take Steph, to get Clay, to get Draymond, and then actually they got Harrison Barnes in the league.
And even bringing back players like Livingston, who had blown his knee out, and it was like he's never going to play again. And then he balled out that year. Like
getting Iguodala to come in and buy into that system and what exactly was going on. And what I want to go back to, I watched that series inside out. I remember probably every game, how it went. And game 5, which is where Draymond Green gets done for the low blow on
kick.
LeBron as he steps over, whatever. And he then misses game 6. I fully believe, and I back this to this day, if Draymond Green, not because of, I'm not calling it Draymond Green because he's going to drop 20 points. Because if you look back at that series, Green, especially for the first 4 games, was D'ing up on LeBron really well. There was a good back and forth, and then Iguodala will come on. I think that series finishes with Draymond Green in game 5. I also think you see the problems that Steph had, because that's a series he throws his gum shield out and misses a game. Like that, I love that series and I love LeBron, but there are things in that way. I think that Golden State team that went 73-9 completely stopped that old basketball that we saw in 2012, 2013, and literally went, this is the blueprint. You're either following it or you're not involved in this league. Well, there were players that couldn't come out.
To interrupt you there, in a sense that we mentioned the Celtic team with Bird, McHale, Parrish. That year on about with GSW, Kerr and his team went back to playing that ball that the Celtics did back in the day.
Yeah.
The ball never touched the ground. You'd see Curry come off a screen, bang. Clay come off a screen. You know, Draymond will be dribbling the ball up and he'd offload it, and then they'd be taking shots. So there was no sort of like dribbling to the basket. There was no one trying to take a chance, or they were all playing for that percentage shot. And, you know, they did a really good job in terms of spreading that ball. And I think that's what really helped spread them apart from other teams that year.
This is something I went to touch on earlier before we moved on to JP, but I didn't get to squeeze it in time. I can't help but feel that Golden State team, despite being put together and being brought together really well by draft, trade, everything like that, there's something that's similar between the 95-96 Bulls team and that 2015-16 Golden State team, and that's Steve Kerr. And that is Steve Kerr, what he brought to the Bulls was a winning mentality, a facilitating mentality, is the word that you love to use so often, JP. He was a facilitator on the Bulls. He was a small guard that just knew how to make the right pass to get a percentage shot. And then you can't help but think him playing a facilitating role in that Bulls team helped him become a good coach in terms of, we don't need the ball in our best players' hands to win games. We just need to move the ball. And you see some of the plays they drew up from that. And it wasn't all necessarily Kerr drawing up the plays. It was, a lot of the time, it was improvised plays. But as you said, that ball didn't touch the ground. And I can't help but think that the way he coaches that Golden State team was brought on by his mentality as a facilitator in the 95-96 Bulls team.
I have to disagree here. I think it's his stint after the Bulls when he was at the Spurs under Greg. Now, you've got to get everyone to buy in, and you've got big names on this team now. Green, but Harrison Barnes in his prime. You've got Clay, Steph. You need everyone to buy into that system. And what the Spurs did in, like, as I mentioned, their team, and when they went out into the draft, they're getting people like Thiago Splitter, Boris Diaw, Ginobili, Tony Parker. These foreign players that people aren't really good, like, they're looking at them and they're half-hearted about them. but Greg knows he can get them on board and they can play systematic ball. And I think that's the one thing that I think that Steve Kerr has learned from Greg is if you can get everyone on board and understand that it's a percentage game, then you're bound to win. So I think it's more under the influence of Greg than being in that Chicago team.
So I'm gonna do what we did at the beginning and just throw you two together here, because the bit we're missing, and you're both completely right, massively. And the bit, Corey, you forgot to add in, and I nearly shown it as you were talking, is the triangle. In Chicago, on the field, the triangle was the ball doesn't need to be in MJ's hand. The ball goes into the post, here's the cut, here's the pass, and it's all fluid. So you look at how Golden State played, it was the ball in the high post or the ball at the top, and let's be fluid and move. And actually, it was a modern day triangle. And we talk about the Phil Jackson when he went to New York, and the triangle didn't work with Melo and Amari because they were trying to do a 90s triangle. Steve Kerr probably unintentionally maybe looked at it and went, oh, actually, that's what I know. He went, let's do a modern day triangle where actually the ball doesn't have to be in Steph's hand like it did with MJ. MJ didn't have the ball coming up the court for those big teams. So I think there's a huge part of Steve Kerr and that Golden State team in the Chicago team, or linked with it. And then also Greg Popovich, because what Popovich did and does is make every player 1 through 12, 1 through 15 believe they're as important as Tim Duncan, as your Kawhi Leonards. And actually you see that because I've listened to All the Smoke, that podcast, which has Steven Jackson in. And Steven Jackson fully believes, because of the way he still is, like he is, fully believed that at the time he was the third or second best player on that San Antonio Spurs team. He was on early doors. And he wasn't. When he probably was numbers-wise, but important-wise, he wasn't. And that's because of the way Greg Popovich makes you feel. And I think you look at the history coaches tree from who played under Jackson, who played under Greg Popovich, it's so extensive, and Steve Kerr is the middleman for that. I think he's been merged together. So I completely agree with both of you. I just think you just throw you two together, you've hit the nail on the head massively. I think both of you.
Yeah. You've made
Steve Kerr is that because he's taken from both. Just to draw this bit to the end, I think the teams we've said is some absolute unreal teams, and again surprised me because I thought it was going to be quite simple in my eyes. I just wouldn't, whatever team LeBron was on, or I thought we would then sit here and go to the Steph KD team, or we've actually come up with 6 or 7 teams that sort of hit different points. And
for different reasons as well, not just the fact they knew how to win. Like, even with my Bulls team, and the same with Golden State, they're teams of records, but it's the way they played and what was going on. It's not necessarily just their results.
And again, not just because we've thrown some superstars together, because there's a team that I nearly brought up and they didn't win it, is the Houston Rockets team of 97, 98, 99, which had Pippen, Charles Barkley, Elijah Wan, Clyde Drexler. It didn't work. It doesn't make them probably talent-wise, oh my God, they're all together. Guess what? It didn't work. So it's the same.
Doesn't mean anything, does it?
Even back end of the Celtics in the mid 2000s, they went Rasheed Wallace, Shaq, Jermaine O'Neal, which actually career-wise you go, oh my God, they're all playing together. Then you go, it didn't work. There's a different level to it. Even the Lakers with Kobe, Dwight, Steve Nash, Pau Gasol, it didn't work.
I think with Pippen, that was when he got his first big contract as well, because he wasn't getting it in Chicago. He was always playing for small money. And then he's seen the light, and then he obviously went to Houston. And it's just like you mentioned, it's just one of them things where it just doesn't click. Like, it's all good having these names on a team sheet, but it just didn't click, and it's unfortunate to see.
Which is what interesting, because I think we've all took this in a different way, which is nice to see. When I said greatest team put together, we didn't go pure talent-wise. We went different reasons. Mine were for the teams I love to watch, and we've gone for the actual strategic way and actually some of the sort of inner workings of the team in terms of the draft as well. So that's interesting to go for. Before we move on to our preview of the weekend and bring the competition back in, I just want to throw out the next topic and give you guys a warning for it. It's going to be looking at the greatest draft ever. Okay, the greatest draft class ever.
And in terms of the year and what?
Yeah, so already I'm going to throw some team years out just to have a look at the 1984, 96 draft, the 2003, and also there's a sleeper year in there, and I can't off the top of my head think of it. it's Steph Curry's year, and there's a couple of sleepers in there because it's Steph. I think there's Blake in that year.
2011 draft.
Yeah, there's and even actually CJ McCollum's year a couple of weeks back and said like his year had Giannis, James Harden, like something ridiculous like that. And it was
2013.
Yeah, like some random draft class had sort of some big sort of players in. But also the reason we do it, I've sort of thought about this is there's a new entry coming out about the 1996 draft, which famous for having Kobe and Allen Iverson, Ray Allen, Steve Nash, Peja Stojakovic. So have a look around that. What we'll do, I imagine those are our three draft class. The 2003, which is LeBron's 96, and then the 84 one, and we'll spend time to discuss those.
I might switch that one up and go for something different from my personal experience of being in ball from 2014 and around that time. I might mix it up and say something different because obviously we know I like going different, and I feel like I played it safe this week, but we know I like talking about different things. So
you said you played it safe. However, me or JP didn't go, I was going to say that one. So
yeah,
we've all gone down different. But yeah, no, do it from what you think is the greatest draft. So I'm all over that.
I'll go the banana boat year. I don't mind. When they all got drafted, so I don't mind doing that.
Yeah, we'll have a look and we'll chat about it next week, which will be decent. JP, this is your time, and as I said, the updated scores. You might need a bit of time now to prepare yourself. I know you sent it, however, I haven't had a chance to look. It's come through, and I know you sent it. I've not looked yet.
At the start of the episode, I was looking at games, and I've just had to go on to remember what I've put. So the first game is on this Saturday, and it's the Wizards v the Pelicans. The Wizards are. Well, Corey said he hasn't watched basketball for a few weeks, but one team that's come into form is the Washington Wizards.
I've been keeping up with them enough. They're one team I've kept my eye on.
Is that because of our number one fan mentioned every week for the past 12 weeks, Scott Brooks?
SB.
It's because those games tend to be on early, and they're games I have been watching, or I like to bet on Wizards games because you best believe they're going to give up points.
But they're really fun to watch. They just are fun to watch.
It's just like we're not going to really focus on defending too much. We just have two elite players that are probably better than you. It's great. I love basketball like that. Also hate it at the same time. But I'd rather watch a game that finishes 130, 120 than watch a Heat game that finishes 84, 80. So, because you best believe they've let me down on a few bets as well this year. So.
But that's the point of this matchup that I want to highlight in terms of it's going to be end to end. You know, how you're stopping Russell, how you're stopping Zion. Both players are in form. I think the Wizards edge it in terms of shooting. I think Rui Hachimura has been improving on
he's picked up some serious form. He's dropping like 22, 12 and 6. Like he's not just dropping points and nothing else. He's hitting boards, he's getting assists, and he's dropping big point games as well.
His jump shot's getting a lot better, and you can see it week in, week out how it's improving. You know, that mid-range game probably needs a bit more work. He likes to take a free now and again. And he's a different dimension that I like about the Wizards, and I think it's just a good matchup on, you know, the debate we have is how do you stop Russell, how do you stop Zion? So who are we going to go with? And I think I'm basing it off the form as a collective group, and I think the Wizards are going to beat the Pelicans.
Ooh, just to let you know, Wayne's gone for the Wizards. I know you guys have seen that. So Wayne's gone for the Wizards. I'm going to jump in here. I can't bet against this guy. I can't sit here and bet against Zion Williamson.
Oh, I thought you were going to mention the walking triple-double, but...
The guy, Zion Williamson's currently just floating in around 37, 38 points. Whenever he feels like it. Oh, wait, he's 6'6", holding the ball bigger than all of them put together. Absolute
And he's found a fadeaway. He's found that shot. He's found that little space creation, hit the shot.
So, Corey, over to you. Wayne and JP were the Wizards. I'm gone for the Pearls. And just to let you know, over the last two prediction weeks, I'm not lost yet. To just say, I'm not dropped any.
These are two really good picks, by the way, JP. Really good picks because I think there could be easily 250 points in this game. Like I would not put it past any top player to drop 30 plus. I honestly look at this game and think there's 3, maybe 4 people dropping 30 plus in this game. But from what I have seen recently, I really don't like counting the Pelicans out because they can just go and drop bombs on you, and Zion can go off at any point, and there's other players in the court that can score points. But with the form that Beal's in, with the form that Westbrook's in, Hachimura's found form. No one's going to guard Zion, but they can guard everyone else on that court, and you can let one player drop 40 and still win that game. So I am going to back the Wizards.
Okay, I was unsure then. I wasn't sure where you were going.
I wasn't too sure. I wasn't too sure until I said that statement about Zion.
So,
everyone else on that court can be guarded. Zion can't.
Every week I draw something like this, just the teams, and I put arrows. Yours, Corey, before you put it in, I thought, he's going Wizards. I drew the line, and then you went, but. And I was like, what? I've just drawn the line. What are you going to do to me now? I was fuming.
The last time we did this, and Tom went on his own, he won.
Yeah.
I picked the Hornets. I'm
a bit scared at the moment. I can't lie.
All right, JP, second game.
Second game is the Heat v the Nets. Now, I picked this game because I watched the highlights of the Nets v Lakers, and I'm thinking, how are the Nets getting beat? How are the Nets, like, you know, three big names are playing? Like, you've got no reason to lose against a Lakers team that are missing both their big stars in LeBron and AD.
That's what the Lakers do.
Yeah, but
that's what LeBron teams do. And I know LeBron weren't playing, but that's what they do.
Yeah, of course. But if you look at it and you're Kyrie and KD, and you don't let that happen. If you're a big name, you don't let that happen. You don't let that happen to you.
It was tainted. That game was tainted because of the ejections, because of the Schroeder and Kyrie stuff.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I don't think that's a real life sort of preview of what's going to happen later on in the year.
But what I've been missing from this Miami Heat team, we mentioned it after the trade, and we're like, oh yeah, we're waiting for Oladipo, we're waiting for Trevor Ariza, and they haven't come to life really. This Miami Heat team, and I feel like it's just I feel like they're about to like blossom or burst or explode. Like they're about to do something big, and I think that it's this game. I think it really is. I think they're going to beat the Nets. I don't know why. I've just got a feeling. I'm going out there. They're going to beat the Nets, and I think Jimmy Buckets here can stop anyone on his day. If he's in like that playoff bubble mode, he can stop anyone.
He can stop anyone, but not five at once.
No, but then you see, this is where I think that Trevor Ariza comes into play. Oladipo comes into play. I think they're all going to come together as a collective, and they're going to beat the Heat. I mean, they're going to beat the Nets. The Heat are going to beat the Nets. And I'm going to leave it.
So this sort of like panicked, worried look on my face is purely because about 5 minutes ago I put myself down back in Brooklyn, and then I thought, hang on, I'm going to go Miami Heat, and then JP, you going Miami Heat worried me. Actually, has worried me because you've joined me on that. I'm joining you on the Miami Heat, and my reason is Harden's injured, KD's half and half, Kyrie, yes, he's playing. And I think over history, I think Butler has got Kyrie's number. And again, I'm such a big fan of Bam Adebayo. I'm going Miami because I think it doesn't mean as much to Brooklyn. This game means more to Miami than it does Brooklyn. Again, I always thought about LeBron when LeBron was in the East. He didn't care what seed he was because he knew he was just going to win. So it didn't matter when it came down to it. And I think Brooklyn have that about them as well. Like, yeah, they win basketball games, but I also think if they finish 8, they still think they still backing themselves to win.
You look at it, right, the game aside, you look at the East, right, at the moment, apart from Philly and the Nets, everyone else is scrambling for positions. The Celtics are like 8th. That's not, you can't bank on being 8th in the East. Like one game, and you're out of the picture. So you need a run of games, or you need to stay within the 3 to 5 mark to actually cement your place, because the East is just a scramble at the moment.
Yeah, so and I agree, and I think it means more to Miami. So I'm going Miami on this to join you, JP. I can't believe I'm doing that. Corey, over to you.
I've been Corey picks the Nets.
So I'm just actually looking up purely because I'm intrigued now. So you were talking about Miami not finding form. Is the good thing that Miami have done, they have restricted teams so much, right? They have literally strangled teams to the point of where they can't drop points.
No, but didn't the Suns beat them by like 20 points?
106. Yeah, the Suns dropped 106 on them, right?
Yeah.
But that's a very, very good. And you saw the videos coming from that game. You saw Chris Paul coaching D-Book. And I actually, this is not to do with this game, but that Suns team, I looked at a record the other day, teams with Chris Paul, and every single team that he's gone to, their results have improved by 20. Right?
I saw that. That's mad, isn't it?
By like 20 games in a season, 20 wins in a season, which is an insane stat and an absolute testament to how good he is. I don't like Chris Paul, but that's his character. It's nothing to do with his ball. I don't like him. But anyway, they can restrict teams. And yeah, you're talking about injuries and stuff like that, but are Miami going to restrict people like Joe Harris from the 3? Are they going to restrict Blake, who's getting more minutes? Like, it's going to be good matchups, but I cannot physically see Miami doing, because Miami are only scoring 80, 90 points a game, 90 points a game at the moment. All right, you can go and score 90 against the Nets, but are you going to stop them scoring 90? No, I don't think so. So for me, Brooklyn Nets are taking that. And I also did say at the beginning of the season or earlier on in the year, I'm going to stop going against the Nets because of various reasons and just accept the fact that they are winning games. And I'm going to put my neck out here and I'm going to say Miami are going to go and drop maybe 92, 94 in that game. The Nets are going to go and drop 100, 110. I'm going big for that game. I'm putting a big old sort of thing out there. I'll say Nets are going to go and beat them 108-94.
108-94.
That's my prediction. 108-94 Brooklyn Nets. And
Corey, I'm going to give you this here. If you get within 2 points either way, I will give you an extra point.
No doubt.
JP, I'm about to offer the same to you. All right. Corey, because of that bold statement, I think anyone predicting the scores, and if you get it right, I'm all for it. I'm writing it down. All right. Me and Wayne don't need to do that because we're in a competition to ourselves, and he's not here.
You lot are just thinking who's going to actually win. I'm thinking how can I save money?
so JP, I'm going to give you time while I just talk a bit about it, but I'll give you time to work out. Corey's gone 108-94 Nets. Okay, I just want to say, JP, you can work out where you want to go for it. So I'll give you time what you want to say your score will be. I want to throw out there, I think this as a one-on-one matchup across the court is probably the best one-on-one matchup we have in the league right now. And that's because of, you look at, like, if you're going to build a 3-point shooter, you put him in a mold of Joe Harris or Duncan Robinson. So they're guarding each other. You've got Butler on Kyrie. You've got Bam on LaMarcus Aldridge.
Bear in mind, neither of those can actually defend.
No, Victor Oladipo on KD if he plays. I just think, like, as a one-on-one matchups across the court, I think it's a better matchup than Philly Brooklyn, which is happening tonight. But I think this is going to be a very exciting game. And actually, the benefit is this is Sunday night, I think at 8:30. So other than switching on Sky, when you have to watch him talk ridiculous. And if you follow this guy on Twitter, the amount of love he gets for literally regurgitating whatever Shannon Sharp had said 2 weeks ago bugs the hell out of me. But that's for another show. But so I think it's a great game to watch. I think it's 8:30 on Sky, which is decent on Sunday. And we're plugging them. Tommy Ardner, get us. All right.
Get us on Sky. I promise I won't swear much.
Get us past 9:30. We're on
all day, all night.
JP, this will be a massive swing because not only are you going to get a point for getting the team right, you might also get an extra point when the other person gets nothing. So this might be a 2-point swing for you guys.
Are you giving
JP?
Are you giving a plus or minus here? Like, are you giving a bit of leeway?
Yeah,
you did say 2 points either way.
Either way.
For both teams, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But after Tom's little talk there about the individual matchups, I've just looked obviously again through like the Heat's recent games, and I'm forgetting about people like Tyler Hero and Kendrick Nunn, and I'm thinking, what's Nets bench like really? Apart from going big, if they keep Blake and LA on the floor, LaMarcus Aldridge, then
did I just hear you say what's Nets bench looking like?
Yeah. Especially if didn't we say that Harden's
Brooklyn
out?
Nets.
Harden's out. Yeah,
I think Harden's out.
Harden's out. So your starting five would be Irving, Irving, Harris, Durant.
Their current starting five when James has been out is Kyrie, Joe Harris, KD, if he's an asterisk, Bruce Brown, and then LaMarcus Aldridge. And their bench five is Jeff Green, Blake. Corey, I know you give me that look. I'm not agreeing with him on this bench.
No, I was
so
going to say,
give me that look.
I know you're not. I'm waiting for it. I'm waiting for it because I know you're not agreeing with him.
You're telling me, right? Jeff Green is guarding Kendrick Nunn. You're telling.
No, he's not.
Who on that Nets bench is stopping Kendrick Nunn?
No, this is the point. This is what you're missing out. No, JP, this is where you're getting it wrong, right? Miami aren't big point scorers. The Nets are. The point is not who's guarding the Miami team. The point is who on that Miami team is stopping Nets dropping 140 points on them.
Yeah, but no. The Heat have been stopping teams getting 100 on them. So never mind the Nets scoring. I'm not worried about that.
But they also only score 80.
Listen.
Well done. You beat a team 84-80. No. That's not a good game of basketball. No one wants to see that.
Getting this score.
I'd rather play Tiddlywinks.
Getting this scoreline right isn't about what the Nets are going to get, because I know the Heat are going to stop the Nets. It's about what the Heat are going to get, and it's a question of whether they played a 3-point percentage game. And
is it whether they get 84 or if they get 88? Is that what the big game is this week? No one wants to watch Miami Heat anymore because they are boring.
No, they're not boring.
They've taken a team of retired men and gone, you can play because you can stop other people scoring points. Yeah, but they're all 47 years old. Iguodala was playing basketball before I was born.
We're going with
25 years ago he was in the league.
We're going with Miami Heat 116 against the Nets.
What?
What are the Nets getting?
You're putting a 230-point game down.
Hang on.
That's not 230. That's 220.
What are the Nets getting?
What have you said?
Right. Heat 116. Nets 104.
Oh, I thought you said 94.
Don't worry.
Right, so
Corey, stop getting annoyed. If you feel like I won't get this bonus point, then stop getting annoyed. Like, it just seems like you're a bit worried now. Like, because I'm
not. After that prediction, I'm not at all concerned.
So the Brooklyn Nets team that played last night, starters were Joe Harris, KD, Nicholas Claxton, who I'm a big fan of, by the way, Jeff Green, and some guy I cannot say his name. So you imagine that's going to be Kyrie in there. Their bench five, Shamet, who's a good player, Blake,
43% three-point shooter.
Timothy Luara Cabarro, Bruce Brown, DeAndre Jordan, and Johnson. That's without LaMarcus Aldridge and Kyrie. So just for that, and they dropped 127 last night.
Yeah, but they ain't coming up against Jimmy Bucket, so it's all
no. I'm just saying, like, that's the team they had, and they dropped 127. So,
Corey, you look a bit worried,
thank you again for this week.
Worried. I look worried. What? Are you sure? They dropped 127 last night, and they literally gave Joe Harris, Shamet got 25 minutes. Some geezer called Luawu Carrot, or whatever his name is, got 24 minutes. Bruce Brown, 24 minutes. And they dropped 127. Are you okay?
Who's their point guard? Who's their starting point guard? What's his name?
Chiozza. He got 14 or 13, was just shy of 14 minutes. I could have played at least 5 minutes in that game. This geezer was running around for 14 minutes doing, well, from what I can see, nothing other than passing the ball to KD. KD, there you go. You're better than me. You can make a 30-footer. This geezer dropped 4, 2, and 5 in 14 minutes. And honestly, no one even knew who he was until I don't know. I've never seen this guy play. I watched the Nets all season, and I didn't even know this guy played for him. A guy called Perry came on for 3.5 minutes, and he got 1 rebound. I could have honestly played in that game last night, and they dropped 127. And you're telling me Miami Heat, with an average age of 47.8 years old, are going to stop that team?
You know what? I can't wait for Corey to get 0 points this weekend.
I'm absolutely baffled.
I actually think we should just have a segment of like JP versus Corey. I'm just going to throw a topic out and just watch you two go at it.
Yeah,
this is worthwhile. It's worthwhile. All right, boys, thank you again for this week. Nice catching up after 2 weeks, and we've all had our stuff on. We all know we're here whenever for messages and stuff like that, so we know we're there. All right, so we got next week we look at the draft class, and I'm sure this weekend of games is going to be very hectic on the chat. So, boys, thank you again. Have a good rest of the evening and just week. See you guys later. I've done it again. I'm going to just stop everything.